Good morning, Dr. John Demartini, one of our favorite experts on rescue. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thanks
I'm
for
so
having me. It's good
happy,
to see you again.
so happy to connect with you again. We used to do lots of videos together in the rescue offices, and you were in my book, Rescue Me. And
Yes,
you're the author of so many books yourself. Are you working on anything at the moment?
yes, I'm working on a big textbook right now, but I'm also finished another book. I just haven't published it yet on dealing with people that perceive losses in their life.
Oh, wow. So today, let's talk about one of the big perceptions of loss. Australia just announced their 2020 budget this week, and job security and the gig economy is a huge topic amongst professional women and certainly our readers. And what we used to rely on, which was job security, being part of a corporate culture, being part of having our identity tied to what we do, is rapidly unraveling. And I was wondering if you could share with us your take on core identity and work.
Okay, we got a couple weeks.
Yeah, go.
First, I want to address job security because there's no security in a job. That's an
How so?
illusion. There's security in your dedication and commitment to serving some human being. And if you have a customer, which is a company, you're serving a customer, which is a company, which is a collective body of people that is serving people. So you're doing an indirect service to serve people. But ultimately, if there's no way that company can serve people, then your ultimate objective is to serve people, because that's the source of income. Whether you do it directly to the customer or indirectly through a company, your job security has nothing to do with the company. It has everything to do with your ability to serve an individual. If the company perceives that you're still serving them, you've still got a job. If your company perceives that you can produce more than it costs, you have job security. So don't ever think that job security is some other individual or some other company. Job security is, can you produce more than the cost to somebody? Can you produce something that gives them a value? Yeah. And we have to really stop that. Same thing in a relationship. Nobody's committed to you. They're committed to the fulfillment of what they value. And if you can fulfill those values, they hang out with you. They stay with you. They're a customer. So I just want to revamp the idea of security, because we tend to dissociate from our own causality of what security is and think that something out there is going to give us security.
Yes.
But the reality is security comes from providing a value and filling the values and needs of other individuals. Now, security doesn't come from a stable company. It comes from your resilience and adaptability to adapt to a changing environment and keep meeting the needs of a direct or indirect customer. So if you are able to meet the needs of somebody right now, there's a source of income.
So how do you suggest that people connect from that position of service and being of service to, a customer or a company, if they find themselves outside of the structure that they were currently tied to?
Well, if they're too rigid to adapt, they're going to be trapped by the external world. So the real question that I think it's wise to ask is, do you care enough about humanity to adapt to now fill some other person's needs? That's job security. And if you can do that more effectively than anybody else, you will always have a business. And actually working for another company, when all of a sudden there's a retrenchment or there's something like the coronavirus, which will be seen as the same corona in the future, I promise. What will happen is it's now testing your commitment to service. If you're really committed to serving, you'll find a way of generating some sort of new income. I mean, I in my own situation, I was adapted in 2 days from a live seminars. We canceled 20 seminars around the world to putting them all online in 2 days. So we weren't online as fully as we could be. And we adapted very quickly. And many people have had to go online with their entrepreneurial business. But if you stop and think about it, you pay the most taxes working for somebody else. You pay the least taxes working for yourself, and you pay the very least taxes by investing and buying assets that give you passive income with long-term capital gains. So the wisest thing you can do is take this opportunity to catalyze you and see it as a slingshot effect, that it looks like you're having a setback right now. But if it catalyzes you to adapt and become an entrepreneur and meet new market needs, the new market, because otherwise you're holding on to a fantasy it's going to come back to the old way,
Yes.
or you're holding on to the fantasy that somebody's going to rescue you.
Mm.
The reality is that what's happening today, the question is, how do you use it to your greatest potential? How can you capitalize on this?
And do you have, you have so many beautiful techniques that you share in the values factor and the Demartini method. Is there a technique that you could teach our audience on how to get that what's inside out, so that that starts to form the basis of an entrepreneurial idea, or as you were saying, the slingshot effect, which is pulling back to catapult forward? Can you share with us how we might kind of get to what it is inside us that hasn't manifested yet into reality as a job or an income earning potential?
Yes, I'll develop that. As you know, I've said this before on our dialogues. Every human being lives by a set of priorities,
Yes.
a set of values.
Yes.
And whatever's highest on your value is where you're spontaneously inspired to act.
Yes.
You're most resilient, most adaptable, most objective, most creative, most ingenious, most equitable in your caring, most stable. So whatever's really highest on your value is your identity revolves around. My highest value is teaching. I'm a teacher. Okay. Now, if you can take the actual circumstances that you think you're facing right now, the actual reality right now, no matter what it is, and not compare it to what it was, not compare it to what you fantasize, how it should be. That's not real. But stop and look at it and ask, how right now, with these situation I'm in now, how is it helping me fulfill my highest value? If you run the story that, oh, it's not, and become victim of your history, you won't become master of your destiny. So you have to stop and ask, how is whatever's happening right now serving? Ultimately, everything is on the way, not in the way. And it's all about perception.
So can you drill down on that? Because I've actually used this method before, and it has just flung open my life to new possibilities. In the depths of despair or something that you perceive to be a disaster, if you do this method, which I've done with you, I've done the Demartini method, I've done the workshop, but if you can look at it, the way I do it, the way you taught me, was to do the positives and the negatives. Can you do that? Can you talk our readers through that?
Yep. We've all had a moment in our life where we've thought we've had a terrible event. And then a day, a week, a month, a year, 5 years later, we look back and we go, thank God that occurred. Wow.
Yes. It's mainly ex-boyfriends, right?
Absolutely. Or you thought you had a terrific event, and a day, a week, a month, a year, 5 years later, you go, oh my God, what did I get myself into? A fatal attraction. So the wisdom of the ages can come through the aging process, or it can come from asking the questions that you glean during the aging process. So wisdom is asking, how right now is this thing that I think is terrible? What's the upsides?
Yes.
And the thing I think is terrific, what's the downsides? And extract meaning, the mean between the two polarities, and stabilize yourself instead of polarize yourself. Because if you think terrible, you're going to go into your sympathetic response. You're going to go into your amygdala. You're going to go into a vicious cycle of trying to avoid that which is unavoidable and try to seek that which is unobtainable, which is futile. But stopping and extracting meaning out of it, as Viktor Frankl did in the concentration camps. He's the one that survived. How specifically is what's happening right now helping me fulfill what's most deeply meaningful to me? And be accountable. I've done this on thousands of people, as you know. And if they don't stop and they quit running their story and being a victim of history and just ask, how's it helping? The moment they see how it's on the way, their blood glucose and oxygen goes into the forebrain, The forebrain is inspired vision, strategic planning, executing plans, and self-governance. And that's where genius is awakened and new innovative creative ideas surface and emerge into our conscious awareness, where we can now take advantage of the opportunity and immediately think of new ways of generating more income than we ever did before. But income is based on the quality of service we provide to ever greater numbers of people. And I made a statement one time at a church, and at first people were shocked. I said, if you're poor, it's because you're not caring about humanity. Because if you're caring about humanity, you're caring enough to find out what people's needs are and equitably fair exchange with them some product, service, or idea, directly or indirectly, through a brokerage or through a creation of some product, and serve them. So right now, instead of dwelling on how it's not the way you fantasize or wishing it was the way it was, the wisest thing to do is to go and look at who can I be of service to right now, and how is this an opportunity for me to go farther into entrepreneurship where I have no constraints on my potential to reach and serve. And then by creating that, you'll realize that this is not a setback. This is actually a very great opportunity to go on farther than you had ever done before. And the temporary economic setback you think you have is only because you don't see what's possible out there. And if you focused on what's possible and went out and did something like that, you'll make more and have more security. And if you're living in security, you're not living in service. You know, if you're focusing on the problem, you're not focusing on the solution. It's about serving people. The more I serve, the more income I have, the less I have anxiety about economics. I've been blessed because I've saved and invested. And this is a great lesson for all of us. I've told people for years to have at least on reserve 6 months or more of cash. And I tell people, I keep over a year's worth of cash, and when there's a crash, there's cash. That's when you make more money. So this will force them to be more diligent. It'll lower their lifestyle temporarily if they don't come up with greater ways of making money.
Yes.
And then when the money does come back, it's going to come back. And if you don't kick up your lifestyle, you can actually save and make up for all the so-called loss you had. And it's not even a loss except in your mind.
I think that's a really interesting point, because a lot of the anxiety around job security or having to pivot into a new way of earning income, which is possibly not via a salary. So our reader might be in a situation where both her and her partner are now, scrambling to pivot. But I think one of the point that you make is really interesting, is that it is an enormous opportunity to have a look at how leveraged we're living our lives and why. How much cash we have in the bank, or how many liquid assets we have that we can turn to. I mean, certainly this period has given me the opportunity to throw everything against the wall and really look at, how I earn money, how I save money, how I spend money, and both personally and in my business. And I've had to really look at, my behavior around money. And then it's very illuminating. And exactly as you said, you start to find the meaning in things rather than blindly living in false security.
When I was 27 years old, for the first 27 years of my life, I didn't mind working. I had a good work ethic, and I was a decent saver, but I always saved for things. I saved for a bicycle, I saved for a bat, I saved for a trip, I saved for, things. And it wasn't until I turned 27, almost 28, that somebody woke me up and realized that I was going to spend the rest of my life working for money the way I was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was never going to be a master of money and have it work for me. And all of a sudden, he asked me a new set of questions, 10 questions. And these 10 questions illuminated me about my relationship with money. And money is a means of exchange for a fair exchange for somebody. And I realized that it's time for me to take a portion and quit living beyond my means or at my means, and take a portion of it and start to save and invest it. Well, I did that, and I continuously did that, and I increased the savings and investment ratio until I reached financial independence. It was amazing.
And
the
what is the
purpose,
ratio that, I know Napoleon Hill talks about it in Think and Grow Rich, and tithing and, that ratio is something that a lot of teachers of human behavior, like such as yourself, and, mastery teach, that a portion of your income has to be put aside. It has.
well, if you're 20 years old, 10% will do it. If you're 30 years old, 20%. If you're 40 years old, 30%. 50, 40%, 60, 50% in order to have something. Well, I just kept increasing it. I increased it 10% every 3 months,
Wow.
whatever I was saving. And that turned out to be enormous. I was saving $250,000 a month within a very short period of time, really. And all of a sudden I was financially independent.
Yes.
And I realized that when I manage money wisely, I receive more money to manage. It's really simple. And when you money circulates through the economy from those who value it least to those who value it most, from those who have the least order and organization around it to those that are most disciplined and ordered around it, and from those who have immediate gratification to those who have long-term vision. And this is one of the greatest opportunities for people to rearrange their position and their perspective on money, so they can start to have it working for them. So people think, well, I don't want to save money. I'm not into that. Or I don't want to invest money. I'm not into that. I'm spiritual or something. And these are delusions that people fall for,
yes,
instead of realizing that they're going to be spending the rest of their life working for it if they don't master it. And this corona is catalyzed a vast number of people to calm down and prioritize what they're spending their money on. One of the laws of economics, if you don't prioritize what you spend your money on, it'll get out of hand. Entropy will take over. If you don't buy assets that put money in your pocket, you're going to keep buying liabilities and consumabilities. And most people, I asked 5,000 people at a talk one time I did in Johannesburg, how many of you would like to be financially independent? And every hand went up, every hand. And I said, how many of you are financially independent? And all hands went down except 7 people, 5,000 people. And I defined it as passive income exceeding active income.
Yeah.
And then I said, isn't that interesting that you all have your hands up because you have the fantasy of the lifestyles of the rich and famous, but you don't have the discipline of doing things that obtain it. And then I had them write down, they had 60 seconds to write down the 10 things they would do if I gave them 10 million US dollars. What would they do with it? They have 1 minute to decide what they would do with it. They have 10 things to write what they would do with that money. And I said, on your mark, get set, go. And they wrote it all down. At the end of that minute, I said, now pass it to the person on the left and calculate how much of that is still usable money. The rest of it has been spent. And 20 to 80% was the range in the room of how much was spent on consumables that depreciate in value. I said, now you can look at your relationship smackly in the mirror and look at why you don't have money and why it's not working for you. Because you keep spending it on consumables that depreciate, and you want immediate gratification to make yourself feel important because you think that buying other people's brands and paying over prices for it is a way to get yourself in good cahoots, you might say, with people around you. But it's not about living through other people's brands vicariously. It's about building your own brand and doing something amazing with your life. And by being patient and letting compound interest, which is one of our most amazing friends, work for you. Now, this right now, Corona is going to make a higher percentage of people transform their relationship with money and save a higher portion and then start to invest and learn about it and educate themselves on that. And that is going to be a blessing. A temporary setback for a year is insignificant compared to the catalyst of what it does in the priorities of your life. And if you stop think that, you may have a parent setback, but that's because you didn't get off your butt and go and serve people now, and you're waiting for this thing to come back the way it used to be. And you're living in the past or fantasizing about the future instead of getting present right now and asking, what is the highest priority action I can do today to serve the greatest number of people in the most effective and efficient way in a manner that inspires me and them? If we ask that question and answer that question and get creative and don't say, I don't know, get mentorship if you have to, your life will change and you'll say thank you to what you've been saying, funk you.
I'm going to wrap it up there, but before I do, is there any of your particular books that you think would be a great read at the moment, a good investment of our time on the subject of money?
Well, I think the simple one would be how to make one hell of a profit to get to heaven. Because a lot of people have internal conflicts about receiving and holding on to money. That's why they keep consuming other people's things. So I think that's always, and of course the values factor still serves people.
Yeah.
But I think that book would be very helpful to people, because a lot of people who have read the book and have sent a letter to me or something, they said, I can't believe that in the first couple of chapters, I blew a whole bunch of myths that I've been running my life with, because there are a lot of myths around money that people don't realize.
And they block you.
Yeah. All I know is that my life changed when somebody asked me 10 questions on financial independence. And I decided that day, I'm going to be financially independent. I'm not going to play games with myself. I'm not going to lie to myself. I'm going to do what it takes. And I'm very grateful for that, because the opportunities, the ideas, the associations, the magnetism that comes from mastering money and not having it run your life, but mastering it is liberating. There's just so much you can do with it philanthropically. There's so much it draws opportunity to you.
Yes.
Because it's a reflection. It's a reflection of our own self-worth. When we're living authentically, it was Hubert Hal Bancroft that said that there were 3 things common to wealthy people. They have a feeling that by divine providence, they're here to serve vast numbers of people. By divine providence, they also feel that they are here to raise the standards of humanity. And the third one is that to transcend the moral hypocrisies associated with money, to see it neither good nor evil, see it simply as a measurement of the services that you sustainably render to other people.
Yes.
And if you do that, you realize it's a measuring system of your commitment to be a contribution to people in the world. And if you do that, you'll have a healthy relationship with it, and you'll invest in it, and you'll let it work for you. Compound interest, as Einstein said, is still one of the greatest gifts we've got. I'm amazed at what it's doing. I just had to be patient. At first, it seems like it's not doing much, but 30 years in, it's doing enormous things, and it's so worth the patience. And I didn't have to lower. I always said that don't raise your lifestyle, raise your savings investments, and then raise your lifestyle only if you raise your savings investments equal amounts. And that keeps you in check and keeps you from becoming trapped by credit cards, banks, mortgages, and cars, all of their inefficient uses of money that were designed for banking systems to grow big banks and use small houses. So learn the art of mastering service. And with service comes deserving. And when you deserve, if you master a little bit of savings and investments, the coronavirus, believe it or not, the coronavirus was the greatest asset accumulator I've had so far in 38 years.
Wow.
I've made more money since the corona than I've ever made in my life, primarily because I managed my money wisely. And with crisis comes people's emotional reactions and great opportunities for people that have saved and invested.
Absolutely. Well, it is always a pleasure to learn from you, to speak to you, and I hope now that I can capture you anywhere in the world with Zoom, we'll be able to see each other more frequently.
That would be lovely. I'd love to do it. I was very grateful that we got to do this interview again. So thank you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I've missed you, and our readers definitely have as well. And it seems a perfect time to reconnect. Thank you.
Thank you.